guys, Marstengen here, bringing you another Dragon Ball Z Dokkan battle video. And so the 4 final stages for the God of Destruction event are releasing. Obviously, once you've beaten all 12, you get access to the Zeno support memory. So that is going to be available now as well, if you've done all of the other ones. So, just like the previous guides that I made, we are going to go through the 4 new gods for these stages, talk about some picks that would be good to use, what kind of team setups. It's not going to be like the other team building guides, say for Easy A's, where we go over a ton of individual units, because a lot of it comes down to different teams, different categories. Some will always be useful, like Reps of Universe 7 or Hybrid Saiyans with Double Gohan is pretty much going to be good for any of the stages, because you can just build the team around having the leaders who are very strong, like the Tech Gohan who guards, so it doesn't matter the typing of the enemy, and then you just fill his team with units of the right typing. So some things will probably get repeated at some point, and I feel like I always have to mention now right at the beginning of the video that Tech Caulifla is of course an MVP. You can put her on any of your teams for the stages, even if she's not getting any buffs from the leader skill, because she has a 100% chance to dodge. So, let's go ahead and jump straight over to the first one, which is going to be Stage 9. Okay, so Stage 9 is Sidra, Universe 9, God of Destruction. He is a physical type enemy all the way through the event. So, just like most of the other gods, can't be stunned, can't be sealed, can't be attack lowered or defense lowered. And then he can attack lower you with his super attacks. That's definitely something to bear in mind here. So if we go over to the tactics page, just like I was explaining in the intro, Reps of Universe 7 is of course a good team to use for any of the gods. Having the 2 UI Gokus together. STR Kaioken Goku is not the worst choice for a leader, because he does at least have type advantage and gives a decent leader skill. He also covers the Universe Survival Saga, so running the rotation of Kale and Caulifla together is actually really strong as well, because they're going to be getting his leader skill buff, because he has that USS sub-lead, and then Kale is going to be very good in this event anyway, because of being linked up with a Caulifla, getting the extra attack, raising her defense, and because she's actually getting the leader skill bonus, she's going to be very good. And I guess it means Caulifla will be able to do a little bit of extra damage, because she's actually getting the leader skill buff, but she's not the hardest hitting unit for sure. So, just like I said at the start, category teams are going to be very strong. You just load them up with, for this one for example, if you're running like double Tech Gohans, you just run as many powerful STR Hybrid Saiyans as you can. You got like the new Trunks from the Saiyan Day banner, like High School Gohan will be great for this. Any strong STR Hybrid Saiyan units that you have. So obviously outside of that, you can still run the mono teams. So bringing like Super Saiyan 4 Goku to run a Super STR team is going to work perfectly fine. You have units you can link him up with, like the Super Saiyan 4 Vegeta. Obviously you can bring units like B-Pan, all those other strong STR units like the High School Gohan. So Super STR is very, very stacked. Obviously they have this guy on there as well, very powerful. If you get to the point where you can transform with him, you're going to be able to see where the super attacks are, which is going to be very helpful in an event like this. And then of course there's his team as well, so Battle of Wits or Majin Buu Saga, you can make a very, very strong full STR team out of that category. If you want to go for extreme, obviously the best combo is of course our man right here, STR Cooler. The Terrifying Conquerors and Transformation Boost crossover with like full STR is incredibly strong. That's the team I actually used to beat the physical god in the first set of stages. So very, very powerful. And of course he was the AoE robot guy whose name escapes me at this exact second, but I managed to use that team to beat him. And from what I've heard from like the JP stages, because he doesn't have the AoE and stuff like that, this guy is not considered as difficult as the other one. So definitely a strong STR team. You got units like Turles, who is of course the Terrifying Conqueror's leader as well. Also Bojack, because his leader skill, Space Traveling Warriors and then Time Travelers, has a lot of crossover with Extreme STR as well. So you can make a couple of very, very powerful STR teams. So best one for this is of course as much STR as you can. Best thing to do is pick out the most powerful category that you can run that has strong STR units. Obviously Universe Survival Saga and Reps of Universe 7, you're not necessarily having to focus exactly on having the right typing of units, because you have units like the UI Gokus who are going to dodge everything most of the time anyway. So full STR, and then just run the most powerful version of the category that you can. Okay, so next up is stage 10, which is RUMSSHI, the Universe 10 Elephant God. So can't be stunned, can't be sealed, can't be attack lowered, can't be defense lowered. He lowers defense with his super attack, so he's another one of these dangerous ones. You have to be careful to make sure that you're not, you know, I mean, unfortunately, I say that, it comes down to RNG, but if there's a huge amount of attacks in one cluster, you really need to make sure you're putting your best defensive unit in that spot, because if the first attack is a super attack and lowers their defense, even units that are reasonably good defensively are then going to take a ton of damage from all of the follow-up attacks. And he can stun you on his super attack as well, which is very unfortunate, especially if it is in that first slot, and then that first unit doesn't even get to attack, so... Obviously, being STR all the way through, your main bet is going to be AGL. Now, of course, I mean, I said at the beginning that we don't necessarily need to go into detail every single time, but, I mean, Reps of Universe 7, obviously a good choice with this Goku, especially with his lead, factoring in Miraculous Awakening as well. You get a lot of other very strong Super AGL units, so obviously Goku and his team is definitely going to be a top pick straight away. Now, obviously, Gohan here is on his category, but also Gohan is the Kamehameha leader. Kamehameha has a lot of strong Super AGL units. Obviously, as outdated as he is by the EZA one now, there is no other Super Saiyan 4 Goku for this team, and he's still a strong unit. Obviously, UI is on this team if you'd rather run the build with Gohan as the leader. And then, yeah, we have a lot of strong Super AGL units on here, especially like the Goten after his EZA. And of course, Kamehameha does have other non-AGL units, but you do kind of want to be careful about running type disadvantage especially. But Gohan does have the secondary leader skill of having Super AGL type, so you can always fill in the team with some other units as well. Another good unit to look at, if you did pull the Pycon, obviously he hasn't returned on Global yet, but Connected Hopes has some strong Super AGL units on it, but then his sub-lead is, of course, Super Class 3 Key and 130, so he's a very solid leader, even if you're just bringing him as the leader, and then a full Super AGL team of units that aren't on Connected Hopes, that team would still be very powerful, because Pycon can function perfectly as a third slot floating unit. You only need to get one Rainbow Orb and the... 3 type orbs to get the buff for your allies, so he can function like a support unit, and then the rest of the team can just be your strongest Super AGL rotations. Obviously, the Super Saiyan 4 Vegeta is another really good fill-in leader. He's on Pycon's category as well, so works very, very well on that team. He has the chance to counter super attacks, which even though it's only 30%, obviously against an enemy whose super attack does actually have a really powerful effect on you, defense lowering and being able to stun. So actually getting a super attack counter off against an enemy like that is very, very good value. So obviously Vegeta post EZA is very, very powerful as well. So even if you're just using him as the leader, he has the 130 leader skill. He does have the extreme sub lead as well, but I don't think there's any extreme AGL units that are good enough that would be warranted running under his team or like under his leader skill. Then of course we have Tapion. Tapion is very, very powerful after his EZA defensively. Like, he's going to work perfectly fine. You can't really run his category, but I included him because he's not on Connected Hopes, so he's not on Pycon's thing. But, you know, any team that's going to give him even like a 130 leader skill, I think he would be like a top pick for that team because he's just not going to take any damage. And then if you do drop below 130, then obviously you get the Hirudegarn transformation. Now, if you've only bought units that are super type leads, then Hirudegarn's not going to get any ki, so you're not going to be able to do any damage. So unfortunately, that is a little bit wasted. So that is something you need to think about if you're going to include Tapion on your team. Next up, of course, we do have the extreme AGL options. So Super 17 is a very, very strong unit defensively. Once you take those first couple of hits, his defense and damage reduction is going to be way up there, and he's not going to be able to tank normal attacks perfectly well. And of course, he's the extreme AGL 130 lead, so you can build the team around any sort of extreme AGL units that you have. Obviously, Android 13 not only runs super well alongside Super 17, but has the Target Goku or Android's leader skill, and there's a lot of AGL units on those categories, so he could definitely be a good leader, because his leader skill is obviously higher than the Super 17, so making the team a little bit more powerful. And then both these guys are on Artificial Life Forms as well, which does have the Cell Juniors or the LR Baby as a leader. And then, of course, there are a bunch of other AGL options on here. The Boo Piccolo is very, very good, even though he supports power absorption. So if you don't have any other real power absorption units on the team, he's not going to be providing support. But he hits reasonably well and has a built-in chance to dodge, so he can still be useful. And, of course, Super 17 and 13 are on power absorption, so he will be supporting them. And then the 40% Rildo is also on this category. So if you're bringing the extreme or super monotyping teams, if you have the 50% supports, they are going to be very useful. But bear in mind, especially if you're in a situation like me, where I do have a few of them, but only at 55%, they're not super, super good defensively. So that is something to bear in mind. So as always, the type advantage is the way to go. If you can run a very strong category like double Gohans or something like that, but with then the rest of the team being fully AGL, this is going to be your best way to take out RUMSSHI. Okay, so stage 11 is Belmod, the clown god from Universe 11, Ronald McDonald himself, the god of Jiren's universe. So quite appropriately, this guy is apparently by far the hardest out of all of the gods, just because of the crazy amount of stuff that he does. So he is AGL all the way through, so you don't have to worry about typing change, but Tech is probably the weakest out of the 5 typings for both Super and Extreme when it comes to full mono teams. There obviously are some very, very powerful units that are Super or Extreme Tech, but if you're trying to run the mono team, it can be a little bit more difficult, as those of you who've struggled with the Champa stage have been saying in the comments. So obviously Tech is the way you want to go, but you have to be very careful with this guy. So obviously can't be stun, sealed, attack lowered or defense lowered, but he has a bunch of other effects, I think more so than any of the other gods. So he can launch 2 super attacks within the same turn. Then he character locks you on rotation, which, as I've discussed many a time in a video, is my least favorite ability that enemies can have. And then this is not seals on super attack. He can randomly seal an ally's super attack. So you might get like your worst defensive unit locked in slot 1, and then your most powerful unit on the rotation is sealed and then can't super attack. So this guy, I think he's the biggest complaint that people have about the fact you only get 3 attempts a day, because if you start off with a bad starting rotation and you get unlucky with like who gets locked into place, you could just be immediately dead on turn 1. So this one definitely is going to be very tough. For people who aren't like super long-term players, don't get like crazy discouraged if you have your first 3 attempts on the first day and you don't beat it, because this one definitely is going to be the hardest one. So it is going to come down to how strong tech options you have in your box. So of course, on the tactics page, what a surprise, reps of Universe 7. Now if you go through an easy A Goku and Frieza before you decide to go and do this stage, then obviously it's going to become a little bit easier. They do have the key tech types sub-lead as well of 120%, which is pretty solid, which is why you see units like the Gohan here, who's obviously not on reps of Universe 7, but even with only a 120 leader skill, he's going to still be very, very good. Definitely a perfect stage for Tech Caulifla. I know it doesn't matter that she's got type advantage because she dodges anyway and doesn't really do any damage, but this is definitely a stage you want to be bringing her and hope that she's getting locked in front of a whole bunch of attacks. But yeah, reps of Universe 7, of course, are going to be very powerful. And then Gohan, we mentioned at the beginning that, you know, his team's useful for any of the events. But this is one where it's really going to come in handy because Gohan is the workhorse of that team. He's going to be one of the best defensive units. He builds up his attack, and because he has type advantage, you are going to be able to deal very solid damage with him, especially once you get to the point of transforming into Gohan, so Ulma Gohan. So whilst his team is good for any of the stages, it really shines in this one because obviously Saviors has a lot of really good tech units, including the tech 50% support TN. And then, of course, Hybrid Saiyans has a lot of very strong tech options. We've got the 2 LRs, all these guys down here. We obviously don't have this new Gohan yet, Goten yet, because he comes out on Vidal's banner. But even like the GT Go Bros, I think I used them on a Goku family team against the Champa stage without any other GT heroes on the team. Because even though they're the GT Heroes support unit, they're a strong enough unit on their own that they are actually very, very useful on the team. So if they can fit under the leader skill of the team that you're running and you've managed to pull a couple of copies of them, they are actually very, very good. And then this Trunks can be very good if you're running a Goten. Obviously, we have the LR Go Bros, so they can work well as a rotation, with Trunks getting a bunch of extra damage reduction. The only problem is a lot of like their interaction revolves around the rotation being set the way you want it to, which against Belmod is obviously going to be awkward because of the locking and things like that. So next up, of course, we did mention the Go Bros. So Siblings Bond or Goku's family is again a very, very strong base to build a tech team from. These guys are still good. I feel like these guys are like massively underrated these days, because whilst they don't stack up to some of the LRs we've gotten in the last like year or so, they're still very, very solid. I still really like this unit. So they're a decent unit. They have the active skill, so you can get a bunch of extra damage and maybe even finish off the fight. And then yeah, Goku's family has a lot of very strong tech options. Like Prime Battle LR Goku will be pretty decent in this event as well. But yeah, Goku's family has a lot of very strong tech options, including these guys who are a solid free-to-play option that support the entire category. And then Siblings Bond being added on as well gives you access to a couple of other tech units that are pretty powerful, like the orb-changing Vegeta. But most of the other solid options here are already on Goku's family. I wouldn't recommend bringing any of these guys. And that's the problem, is Extreme Tech doesn't really have any representation here, because Janemba can be pretty good, but then most of the rest of the team for Extreme Tech is just not very good, like defensively. They have a lot of powerful units in terms of dealing out damage, but for a mono team, I would say it's probably the weakest out of all 10 in the game in terms of synergy for a full mono Extreme Tech team. So super types definitely are going to be the way you want to go, but just like all the previous ones, you want to try and pick out your strongest category option and then bring as many of the type advantage units as you can. But that being said, certain units like this Vegeta, and obviously units that you're going to see on like reps of 7 builds, like even the STR UI Goku is on here. Now this guy obviously took a bit of a gamble, because if this Goku doesn't dodge, you're potentially going to take a ton of damage with him. But he does have the super attack effect to disable guard, so it doesn't matter that he has type disadvantage, he can still do some reasonable damage. So again, let me know what you guys are going to use for Belmod, and come back to the video after you've had your first attempts and let me know how it went, because he definitely is seemingly on paper the hardest, and that's what JP players have been saying. So this one is definitely going to be an interesting challenge. Okay, so the 12th and final stage is against GEENE. I don't think I've actually ever heard his name said out loud before. So yeah, he is the Universe 12 God. He is int type, he stays mono int all the way through. Can't be sealed, attack lowered, stunned, or defense lowered, and he does have a chance to evade. So I forgot to mention that in the previous ones, but none of the other 3 actually have that dodge chance, which is definitely a little bit more on the helpful side. Now the int ones I feel like are probably some of the easiest, just because of how crazy the physical like box set is. Like Realm of Gods is a very strong team option, because the leader Beerus, physical, very, very powerful. You know, you can run the double UI rotation, because as always reps of Universe 7 is definitely a solid option for this team as well. But because of the exploding rage sub lead of Beerus, you can run this Kale, who's actually very good as well, has really good damage reduction for the first few turns. So this team right here, I mean, if you can run this exact team, this would be fairly easy, for sure. Very, very powerful. And then of course we have the Realm of Gods team with the Easy A Goku, and then a bunch of the LRs, like physical LR Blue Boys are going to be super, super good in this event as well. So those are the 2 that it shows. What a surprise. Realm of Gods, very powerful for this event. I'm sure no one is shocked. Representatives of Universe 7 as well. I mean, this guy, any team you can run him on to run him in this event against this boss, like he's going to be insane. You're going to get those turns where he pops off and does multiple super attacks, then he's going to get a bunch of counters, get some crits in there, and he's just going to do a ton of damage all by himself. So he's obviously very, very strong. But physical has a lot of solid options. Obviously, if he did summon on their banner and got the Trunks and Goten, their leader skill is really good. They're really good for this, because on turn 3, as long as you have another Trunks or Goten on the rotation, you can use their active skill, which gives you a 100% chance to dodge. So obviously super good in this event. It's why Tech Caulifla is the MVP. So you can put them in front of all the attacks, get guaranteed dodge. That also builds up their passive and makes them even more powerful. So they are very, very good. And then their leader skill for this event. I mean, I used this team against the previous int stage, and it was one of the quickest runs, I think, because like Gifted Warriors has a lot of really, really strong physical units on it. But especially the like the Trunks that you need to fully activate all their passive and their active skill and everything. But the other thing is they have Kamehameha as their sub-leader skill, which, I mean, the physical units on this team, like GT Goku's on there, he's ridiculous. Super Saiyan 4 Vegeto's really good. This orb-changing Goku's good. Obviously, Vegito Blue is on here as well. This support Goku's pretty decent. The LR Gogeta is on here. The Roshi's on here, who obviously now has his Easy A available once this event is out. And the Blue Boys. Like, this team is going to be insanely powerful. And I have this tab up because he is on Gifted Warriors. Obviously, there is also the Super Saiyan 3 Gotenks. So not only is he super good under their leader skill, but if you just have to run a super physical team featuring some of the units that we've mentioned already, he has the 130 leader skill. He has a built-in 30% chance to dodge for the first bunch of turns. So he's actually a very solid option for these events. You can get lucky and like put him in slot 1 and have him just dodge absolutely everything. And then if you're getting his 11 key super, and even if you don't, like he hits really, really hard. Like his 11 key super definitely is going to do a lot of damage. So he's good as a sub lead just to run a super physical team. And then Kamehameha obviously has a ton of crazy options. Someone who's on Kamehameha who's also a very strong option is of course the LR Bootanks. Very powerful unit. Obviously being on the anniversary banners, chances are you've managed to pick up a copy or a couple of extra dupes or something like that. And he's a very, very powerful unit on this team. I don't know if running him on the Kamehameha team itself is the best idea, just because you're not going to get all of his links and, you know, use him in the most optimal fashion. But his team is really good as well, because if we have a look at Margin Power, the physical units are pretty decent. Like the 50% extreme support unit is the Super Boo, so he works really well on the team. This Boo after his Easy A is actually really good. And then Kid Boo, of course, the classic, the showcase machine, 50% support unit, very good. The other two Boos, not as great, but you've also got the Awakening for the Evil Boo, who does have built-in dodge, which is quite useful for events like this. Now, obviously, as a, well, I say free-to-play, he was an SR that awakens, he's not really free-to-play, but he is a weaker unit, so if he doesn't dodge, he's definitely going to take a significant amount of damage. But this team does have a lot of healing built in, which is a good way to mitigate taking extra damage with some units. And then he does have power absorption on the side as well, so that doesn't really give you access to much other great physical stuff. Like this Mira is okay, but he doesn't really have anyone good to link with on this team setup. And then the Omega, unfortunately, until he gets his Easy A, is pretty outdated now. I didn't include Physical Cooler here in the discussion because obviously he doesn't have his Easy A on global yet, so he still only has the 120 leader skill, and he's not as powerful, not as good defensively, but you could always run him and run a full extreme physical team as well. There's a lot of other strong options for extreme physical, so physical definitely is the way to go. As always, you can use other categories, Reps of Universe 7, you could run double Gohans for Hybrid Saiyans and Saviors and just make most of the team physical, but those apply to basically every single stage. So let me know what you are going to be using to take on this final stage, and if you know how you're actually supposed to be pronouncing his name, let me know down below. So there you go, that is the final part. That is all 4 gods gone over for the last 4 stages. If you've done these, you should hopefully have been. I've done all 12, and you are going to have the Zeno support memory unlocked, which is very, very powerful when you're using a Universe Survival Saga team. So I'll get all of these done, obviously do videos for them, and then I'll do a video trying out a USS team, probably on like the GT Goku event, since it's the hardest event pretty much in the game at the moment, and actually try out that Zeno support memory. So like I said, for each of the parts, let us know what team builds you're going to use down below. If you have any further questions or want to talk about other units that we didn't mention in the video, feel free to do that, and I will try and put a comment as quickly as possible with the timestamps for each section as well. So there you go. So that is going to be it for the video, guys. This has been the Master Ningen. Smash that like button, subscribe to the channel if you are new. Check out the links down below for the Discord and the merch store, and I will see you all again soon. Have a good one.